this is Mr. Everything, and I am coming back at you with another Wargaming and miniature video. In this video, we're going to talk about my personal Napoleonic project. I am working on an epic Waterloo project. What you see on the camera here is an experiment and nothing more. And I'll talk about that here in just a second. If you watch my Wargaming Wednesday videos, Wargaming Wednesday live streams, you've probably already heard this. But if you only come to my channel to watch my Waterloo project updates, then this might be new for you. So let me go ahead and tell you what's going on with my epic Waterloo. In the past, I was doing 28 millimeter black powder. I was building up enough of an army to do Quatre Bras, and then from Quatre Bras, I was going to progress into a Waterloo. I was going to do like a Hougoumont first, and then I was going to move on and do something like Papelotte La Haye and then Plans Noir, so that I could do like 3 different tables, because that's what you would have to do at 28 millimeter. Probably you would need a bigger table, like a 6x12 for each of those battles or something like that. And that's wearing on me in the fact that, I mean, it would be a spectacle to be able to have every battalion on the table at one time, but also I didn't want to have to do a lot of proxying or, I don't know. It was just the 28 millimeters was just too big of a format to do a reasonably large battle. And when I think of Napoleonics, I think of larger battles with more than a corps per side. I don't know, Borodino, Austerlitz, what's it, Leipzig, Waterloo, obviously. Or Ligny, or any of these battles I consider to be fairly large battles, and you can't do that with black powder. Black powder, well, let me rephrase that. You can't do that in 28 millimeter, not unless you've got some kind of huge table and a ton of miniatures to be able to do any reasonably large battle. So, but I also don't want to do it at the brigade level. I don't want to have, I don't want to play Napoleon's battles, right? Napoleon's battles, you would have a 6-figure unit like, or 6-stand unit like that, and it would be considered a brigade. You could even have you could have anywhere from 3 to 7 stands representing a brigade, and I didn't want to do that. What I wanted to do is play a battalion level game, but still be able to play a large battle. Do I think I'm going to be able to do the entire Battle of Waterloo at the battalion level? No, I think that's a stretch to be able to do that. That'd be excellent, but I think that would be a stretch. I still think I'm going to need to break up the battlefield, but I don't want to break it up in such a way that I found what I was doing was playing portions of battles. I was only playing the Hougoumont and the immediate area around Hougoumont, or I was playing La Haye Sainte and the immediate area around La Haye Sainte. What I want to do is play a battle that I can have Hougoumont and La Haye Sainte and a larger area around that, where the entire French Second Corps can attack, or if or the area around La Haye Saint and Papillote La Haye, and that entire area where I could have the entire first corps attack, or maybe the right flank with without plans noirs, so I could have the entire Prussians and the Allied right flank or something like that. So I'm thinking Waterloo on 2 tables and not 3 condensed tables. And I think I could do that at the battalion level without it being bogged down. So my mind over the last month or two has really been crunching numbers, reorganizing my army lists. I might even have to do it again because over this last couple of weeks, I've struggled with the I plan to do Epic Waterloo, right? I plan to do Epic Warlord games because it's black powder designed for small units, not like small figure scale. The problem with Epic Waterloo and the Epic, when I say Epic, I'm talking about the Warlord games Epic rules, right? They're black powder Epic scale rules. So if I just say Epic, that's what I'm talking about. The problem with the Epic rules, or the Epic, let me rephrase that. The Epic basing convention is that it's a 60 millimeter base. And all I concern myself with, and all the rules concern themselves with, is base frontage, right? So why would they go with a larger base frontage per base? So they went from a 40 millimeter base to a 60 millimeter base. What that granted them was you could actually put more figures on that base. You could take smaller figures and you could put even more figures on that base. Because at 28 millimeter, you're putting 3 figures on a base, on a 60 millimeter base. But with the Epic rules, you can put 10. Okay, so I've decided through the crunching of the numbers and when I'm talking about numbers, I'm talking about ranges and width of units and movement distances and table sizes and terrain, the building sizes and roads and all that stuff. All that stuff, I'm pretty much starting from scratch, right? So I pre-ordered for the store an Epic bundle where I'm going to be getting in like a bunch of boxes of Epic battalion box or brigade boxes, starter boxes, paint sets, buildings, all that stuff. And I did it kind of not jealously, but selfishly, where I was planning on getting that in for the store, but I personally am going to open up a starter box, obviously, or 2, one French, one British, or more. I thought, and use the Huguenot buildings and all that stuff, right? But then I got to thinking, and I've been thinking for the last few weeks, actually over the last month, because I've already placed a bunch of orders in. I thought that I could get some 15 millimeter models and I could use them with the 60 millimeter bases, use them alongside. Maybe their head height's a little bit higher or whatever, but I figured I could use them alongside of the Epic models. The Epic models are my understanding, N scale, 1/144 scale. And that won't work because on a 60 millimeter base, I can put 6 15 millimeter figures because a 15 millimeter figure fits comfortably on a 10 millimeter frontage. And that's with them being really close, like the Epic models. But the problem there as well runs into the depth. Two 15 millimeter models will not fit back to back on a 20 millimeter base. But I don't care about depth. Remember, I can get my own bases. I could say 60 millimeters wide and 25 millimeters deep, which will work perfect. But that still would only get me 6 figures across and then 6 figures in the back, right? And I've been struggling with those sitting beside the Epic models. Even if I could shave the base down a little bit, bring their heads down, or even bulk up the Epic bases or whatever to make their heads closer to the same height, the width won't work. Now, I said to myself, I could just scratch the whole idea of using the Epic plastics and just go completely 15 millimeter on my own, have every figure be the same head height, every figure being the same, every base being right. So let's go into the assumption that it doesn't matter what size the figure is, right? Okay. That's the first assumption. It doesn't matter what size the figure is. I can just do it my way, right? 60 millimeters for a base is 1.5 times the size of the 40 millimeter bases. They suggest 4 bases for a standard size unit. In line, that winds up being exactly the same length as a 40 millimeter base times 6. It's just way too big. It basically, I did not save anything at all. 0 size-wise. Yes, I understand the bases are thinner, but I don't care about the depth. I care about the width because I care about battalions and divisions that are side by side. Now they're going to still occupy the same amount of space on the table. So that still means I still need the same size giant table. So that's out. So the 60 millimeter times 4 is not doable. Okay? All right. So I said to myself, 30 millimeter bases, right? 30 millimeter bases by 25 depth. That's what these are. Bought these a long time ago for my Ancients and 15s, and my American War of Independence. So if I do half bases, right, 30 millimeters, then I could use actually 4 bases, just like they recommend for Epic, and 4 bases at 30 millimeters actually is half the size of a 40 millimeter times 6. Okay, so that's perfect. That means I've just doubled my gaming area. I've just halved the frontage of my divisions. So now that equates to a bigger battlefield on the same size table. So, and that's what I want to do. I want to increase the size of the battlefield. So I need to shrink the base size. Okay. So then then I started going with, okay, perfect. I got my base frontage, 30 millimeters. That's going to work perfect. I thought about the Epic plastics. I said, okay, Epic plastics come as a 10-man strip. I could, hypothetically, I'll have to do some experimenting. I'm going to. I could cut them in half, chop, and then I could have 2 5-man, like a 10-man frontage would be on 2 bases, right? What would that do for me? Well, I'll still be able to use the Epic plastics 5-man frontage, so these bases would actually have 10 figures on them, right? 5 in the front, 5 in the back. If I use the Epic scale models, I can stick with the 20 millimeter depth, which is also half of 28 millimeter. Okay, so, the 28 millimeter base of 40. Okay, there we go. I've decided I'm going to do 30 millimeter frontages. I'm going to do a 5-man front, 2 ranks per base, so it's 10 figures per base, 4 bases per battalion, so that means I'm going to need 40 figure battalions, which not a problem at all. I could probably, I did paint these 48 models in 2 days, 3 days, 2 days plus flocking. So that's great. I could do maybe 2 battalions a week if I do the strips of 10, right? And I could probably paint the Epic models faster because they're smaller and they are linked shoulder to shoulder, so you don't have as much surface to paint, right? Because like my right shoulder and my buddy's left shoulder are actually overlapping. So, basically, I feel like I would be able to crank them out a lot faster. And but then I got to thinking, and this is where my project runs into a stumbling block. The only figures that you have from at that scale are the ones provided by Warlord Games. It's a unique Napoleonic scale that the other manufacturers don't make. Nobody makes. So if I want Austrians, or if I want Prussians or Russians or Spanish or Portuguese, Saxon, Bavarians, whatever I want, you cannot get. It's not like the American War of Independence. I mean, it's not like the Civil War. The Civil War, they actually used the same sprue for both armies and left it at that. And then they added Zouaves later. So it was a more manageable agreement between the player and the miniature scale. But with Napoleonics, by violating not my trust, by abusing my loyalty, Warlord has forced my hand. They basically have said, take it or leave it, right? Now, I understand that they're going to have waves coming out, but they haven't announced these. They haven't even they've hinted, or they've leaked some information about some Highlanders and 95th Rifles in skirmish. I don't care. I want more. I want Nassau, Brunswick, Dutch Belgians. I want Well, the French are, I want the Grenadier Guards. I want everything, right? I want some unique units like Polish Lancers or whatever. And they haven't hinted or suggested or put a release schedule out. If they had put a release schedule and they said in 10 years, we're going to have every unit imaginable for Epic will eventually be released, I would be more excited to do that scale. But because it's a unique scale and it's the product line is so limited. I mean, it is extremely limited. British, French. That's it. Nothing else. And the British don't even have all the British. They only have the guys with the plumes on the side, the Belgic Shakos. I know of at least 3 or 4 battalions at Waterloo that had stovepipes, right? They haven't released any of those. Not going to. I want some guys with soft caps, for the Nassau, not the Nassau, the Hanoverians. Or I can just paint guys with Belgic Shakos as Hanoverians, but that's only half of the Hanoverians. Some of the Hanoverians have stovepipes. Some of them have soft caps. So I'm upset. Okay, so that falls into my second part of what I'm about to say in this. It's miniature scale. We figured out what the base scale was going to be. I'm definitely 100% going with a 30 millimeter frontage. I've decided it. I'm going to have four base units. Absolutely. There are some brands out there that make 10 millimeter Napoleonics. We're not going to go into all that. I did that on my Wargaming Wednesday show. Go back and watch that. I rehash a lot of what I'm about to say now on that show, but if I miss something here, I might say it there. So, if you watch my channel, you probably watch both of them anyway. I can get 99% of everything available for Napoleonics in 10 millimeter. I can get 100 models in 10 millimeter for $21. That's the going rate for Old Glory 10 millimeter French line infantry. Okay. It sounds like a lot, right? Because you're saying, well, 28 millimeter models and 15 millimeter models. 10 millimeter models are smaller. I get that. They're even smaller than 15 millimeters, but not much. They're not much smaller than a 15 millimeter model. And I'm going to be able to get 5 of them on a 30 millimeter base, because all the companies that I've looked at, they either sell them in 5-man strips or individual models that are based in a way that you can put 5-man side by side on a 30 millimeter base. So I looked at some of the details on, the like straps and hats, and just go look at 10 millimeter GHQ. Go to GHQ.com or whatever the website is. Go to GHQ go to their 10 millimeter Napoleonics page and pull up some of their pictures of their models. And what I'm asking you to look at is the crest on their helmets, the cross straps, the backpack details, the straps, the buckles, the buttons on their officers. It's all modeled, and it's in really good detail on a 10 millimeter model. So is it going to be harder to paint? No, because I don't paint with like museum quality detail anyway. I mean, just look at these models and you can tell. What I do is I paint, I would say probably an 80%. You know, I don't paint at 100%. Like I said, it only took me 2 days to paint these. What do? I do flesh, jacket, pants, collars and cuffs, straps, backpack, you know, ammo, canteen, haversack, musket, metallics like swords and rifle barrels, slings, plumes. Done. You know, so I don't get into the minutia, but some of these 10 millimeter models, some of them are not so good looking. Some of them look kind of, you know, like, I don't know who the sculptor was, but he obviously, you know, wasn't that good. So I ordered some, and this is part of the update, I suppose. I ordered some 15 millimeters from other companies that I thought were smaller 15s because I wanted to try to compare them or use them with my epics. That idea, I'm throwing it out the door. I'm gonna get some 15 millimeter models in. I'm gonna shelf them. I'm probably just gonna leave them in their bags and I'm gonna sell them. Right? I'm just gonna turn them around. Boom, sold. 15 millimeters, out the door. But I also ordered some 10 millimeter. I ordered GHQ, Old Glory 10 millimeter, and M&M, which is military magistratum, something like that. I don't remember. Et Sans results, and which I think those rules are super cool. I think I might get those rules just to check them out but the problem with those rules is one base, which is about this size, is a battalion. Even though it's got like 10 figures on the base, just like exactly what I plan to do, but they count the base as a battalion and not a unit like this. I'm sure I can modify it or adjust it, but I think I'm going to get those rules in just to see what it's all about. And it would be a lot faster for me to get units on the table, but that reminds me of brigade level gaming, where I'm not worried about formations, or I'm not worried about brigade guns. I'm only worried about divisional guns, etc. So it just reminds me of Napoleon's battles, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just another variation of it. I could still probably base them up my way and still play either Black Powder or those rules. I'll just have to the way the bases are actually laid out. So I probably could play both sets of rules. So I'm probably going to get those rules in just to check them out. But my focus is going to be Black Powder, 4 bases, 5-man front in 10 millimeter. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know this for 100% fact yet, because I want to see the epic models. from Warlord. I want to get them in my hands and hold them. I want to take the 10 millimeter or even the 15 millimeter models that I have from these other companies, cross compare all of them and make a decision once I actually have these models. If I decide to go with 15 millimeter because they're bigger and easier to paint than these 10 millimeters that might be too small and harder to paint, then that might be the case. I don't think that's going to be the case because I don't want to put 6 figures on a base, because that's just the Perry basing method in 28 millimeter. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It just doesn't look meaty. Doesn't look thick enough. I want there to be hundreds in a battalion or whatever, or a brigade. Okay. So here's my next stumbling block. 10 millimeter flags. Right now, I'm leaning towards 10 millimeter. I'm heavily leaning towards 10 millimeter. I'm probably in the 75% commitment to 10 millimeter. 10 millimeter flags. Well, this Magistratum Militarum, or whatever it's called, that company, their starter sets and their expansion sets, I do believe, come with flag sheets in 10 millimeter, right? So that sounds good. I would like to be able to get those flag sheets separately, just buy them straight up. Okay. I've also considered investing in a laser printer and printing my own 10 millimeter flags. Considered that. But that would be a cost investment that I don't think I'm willing to go with. Well, I have to kind of figure out exactly how many flags I need and see if that would be a worthwhile investment. Otherwise, Pendragon sells some French and British flags, but they don't have like the Brunswickers or the Nassau or the Dutch Belgians. See, any of those odd companies or nationalities, I'm not finding flags for those guys in 10 millimeter. I can probably print some of my own using, just generic inkjet printer and, like from Warflag or something. But my inkjet printer is struggling with printing details in color. So I can't get, that's why I was thinking about investing in a laser printer, because I could probably get some really good details in a small flag. But that's something for the future. Maybe I'll do it. Maybe I won't. I don't know. Okay. So that's my thought process. 10 millimeter, maybe 75. I'm going to have to wait till I get these figures in my hand, which is probably going to be in January. I've got some 15 millimeter miniatures on the way. Don't even care anymore. I'm only waiting for these 10 millimeter models coming in, because I already have a bunch of 15 millimeters. I was wanting these minifigs to come in because I remember minifigs being smaller. Now, hypothetically, if I order these 10 millimeter Old Glories, which I ordered some Old Glories. If they tend to be a little bit bigger or bulkier than a normal 10 millimeter model, and they become compatible with the Epic models, that would be 100% satisfactory for me. I would drive on with the Epic scale. If these models that I ordered are larger than they claim, because I understand that one company's 10 millimeter is another company's 12 millimeter. And I understand that one company's 12 millimeters, another company's 15 millimeter. So I have to get the figures in, and that's what the delay is for me to jump into this. Okay, another thing. 15 millimeters is bigger than Epic, right? The buildings that are included with Epic are 15 millimeters. This is unfortunate because, again, I'm trying to save space on the battlefield, and I don't want buildings that are twice the size that what they're supposed to be. So I found a Huguenot out there in 10 millimeter. It is 20 inches by 17 inches, right? And that sounds good. You know, that sounds like a good scale for a Huguenot. Especially, I'm not sure exactly how big this 15 millimeter one is. I'm sure it's better quality, or, you know, because it's going to be an MDF model building experience, where the 10 millimeter one is probably resin or metal, and it's probably, details aren't probably there, but I might get it anyway just to have it, if I decide to go 10 millimeter. If I stay with Epic scale, if I go with like a 12 to 13 millimeter scale, if I can figure out who might have the right, you know, miniatures for that, then I might stick with the 15 millimeter buildings. Understand that when you play Black Powder, a building is not supposed to be one building. It's not supposed to be a 1-to-1 ratio. Huguenot is a bunch of buildings that you know, like you've got the chapel and the farmhouse and the stables and the servants' quarters, and you got a bunch of that kind of stuff, all inside of like a walled compound. That should be, in Black Powder, it should be 1 or 2 buildings, and it could be occupied by maybe 2 battalions. Maybe 3, maybe 4 battalions. I'm not exactly sure. If that's the case, it should be 1 building per town sector. And having a 1-to-1 model of Huguenot on the table is not accurate when you're talking about 30 millimeters represents 100 men, you know? So, or, you know, a couple hundred yards. So if that's the case, then the building should only be maybe 60 millimeters wide, technically, you know. Maybe wider. Maybe I'll have to do some math on that. But okay. Having said that, I did this 15 millimeter scale comparison to the bases, but mainly I did it for the flock. I wanted to check out which flocks I was going to use. But then I also did these guys over here, which are N scale trees, right? These N scale trees, you know, might be a little small for a 15 millimeter model, right? So that just, but they're going to be great with the Epic scale that's coming in, and the and or the 10 millimeter, which 10 millimeter is supposed to be N scale as well. So depending on who you ask, 10 mil is N scale or 13 mil is N scale. So it could be 1 to 160, or it could be 1 to 144. Just depend on who you're looking at. I did a whole video on scale as well, so you can go check out how to determine what a model scale is. Okay, that's sliding down. What's up with that? Okay, I didn't tighten it up. Okay, so that's where I sit right now with my Epic Waterloo. I am going to do 4 bases for a standard unit. They're going to be small. They're going to have a 5-man front. I'm gonna now the cavalry. Okay, here we go. Cavalry. What I was planning on doing was having, because what they do is a 60 millimeter base, which is basically 2 of these is a 60 millimeter base with 5 cavalry. Try to get it back into focus. That would be 5 cavalry figures. And what I was planning on doing was putting 4 cavalry figures. Now, what I'm going to do then in that case is put 2 cavalry figures per base, and then okay, because the cavalry figure in Black Powder is normally 50 millimeters, but that's because of the horse and model and everything are much deeper, where in this scale they're not that deep, so you should be able to get them on a 20 millimeter depth. So I could probably put 2 horses on a 25 millimeter frontage, 25 millimeter squares actually. If that's the case, if I can do a horse on a 25 millimeter square, then I'll probably do that and still use 6 bases, so it'll still be 12 models, right? And they won't be this 30 millimeter wide. They'll only be 2 figures 25 millimeters wide. But instead of, well, I want to do 4 bases too, so I don't think I can squeeze 3 models of cavalry on a 30 millimeter base. I might use a 40 millimeter base because I want the cavalry bases to be a little bit larger than the infantry bases. But if I use a 40 millimeter base, I might be able to fit 3 cav on there. And if that's the case, I don't think I want to do that. I don't know. I'm still thinking about that. So I need to get some cav in, which I have some cav ordered. And when they come in, I'll see how many of those I can actually fit on a various different bases. Because I could go 20 by 20, which I don't want to do. But I could go 25 by 25, which is exactly half of the frontage of a cavalry unit. Now I've also considered, now this is something, I've also considered, and this was probably aired the last time I did a Waterloo update. I have a spreadsheet where I count the number of men in the battalion and divide by 150, and that tells me how many stands it is, right? So like a 4-stand battalion would be 600 men. But if there was 750 men, I would go with another stand, and if it was 900, then I would go with another stand, and that would be my guard units, right? They would be 6 stands. And I would try to avoid, if at all possible, odd number of stands. So like a small unit would be 2 stands, and then a tiny unit would be 1 stand of skirmishers. And so the 1 stand of skirmishers might actually be 40 millimeters wide, with like 4 figures on it or something, or more. I don't know how many I could fit with a 10 millimeter. I don't know. But then again, all of that will be determined when I get these 10 millimeter models in and I get the Epic models in and I'm able to compare. I've already done some 15 millimeter limbers. Now, I don't know. See, they're going to be too big, I think, for Epic. But again, last topic, I thought about using 15 millimeter models as tokens. Like if I have a unit and it's deploying skirmishers in the front, I would take one of these stands and put it on the table in front of the unit. It would stand out as not a maneuver element. It would be not part of the unit because the figure scale will be so much bigger. So everyone could identify that that's not a unit. That's actually just a token letting you know that skirmishers are deployed. And then the same thing with the limbers. I was thinking 15 millimeter limbers would still be okay, but I don't want to do that. I want to make sure everything's the same scale. So if I go 10 millimeter, I'm going to have to go with 10 millimeter limbers. I don't know. All right, guys, I've had enough of a rant. Thanks for coming out and watching this Waterloo project update. And I will see you once I get some 10 millimeter models in, and I'll be able to do another review. So it's going to be a while. So expect there to be a pause in my Waterloo project updates until I get more information. Or if I build more terrain, or if I decide to build the map or something like that. All right, guys, I'll catch you in the next one.